A couple of weeks ago, when the organizers of this session wrote to me suggesting that I ought to speak on the subject of a journey, given that that is the theme of the day, I was just putting the finishing touches to a manuscript, a book of mine that I've been writing. So I thought this is a great opportunity to talk about a personal journey of writing my first book. Then the more I thought about it, the more I realized it's probably worth your time and mine to talk about something far more consequential, which is the subject of the book, but the journey in itself. And the journey that I'd like to talk to you about today is the technological transformation of India from 1947, when it gained independence, to the modern nation state that it is in the 21st century. I think it's important to understand how technology matters to us today. Debates in technology, to me, divide people in India into two sets, two camps, if you will. One group of people who believe that India has acquired a great deal of technology over the course of its lifetime, and another set of people who believe that India has acquired no technology whatsoever in the many decades of its existence. And as is the case with Schrodinger's cat, this is true and not true at the same time. For instance, India has one of the most advanced space and missile programs anywhere in the world, but it lacks the ability to produce even the basic electronic components needed for modern nation building. The Indian nuclear program, for instance, is considered the crown jewel of its technological achievement. But the historian Robert Anderson, for instance, has noted that the nuclear program in India did not produce a single megawatt of electricity during the first 2 decades of its existence. Another aspect, the personal computer. The personal computer was introduced in India in a big way in the 80s, just as Steve Jobs in Silicon Valley was marketing and selling the Macintosh. I'm sure you all heard about it. Cut to a decade later, in the 90s, almost a third of all American households had a computer. In India, there was just a handful of PCs. Why is that? And more recently, why do Indians have such extreme views on Aadhaar and the collection of biometric data? Everyone I know, friends, colleagues, they again fall into two sets or two camps. One set of people who believe, who love and support the Aadhaar program, and another lot who, quote unquote, want to destroy the Aadhaar. Why does technology play such a crucial role in our social and cultural debates? And the answer lies in its politics. To understand the political history of technology in India, the circumstances, the political circumstances under which technology was introduced in India and welcomed or rejected by the people, we would have to start at the very beginning. And the beginning is 1947, 2 years after the Second World War ended, and during which time India was born into the world. Now, the Second World War was the age of scientific possibilities. Pretty much every modern technology or invention known to man today and used by man today was born during the Second World War. Radar, microwave, jet propulsion technology, you name it. The telephone, which was invented at the turn of the 20th century, took around 60 to 70 years to reach 75% of American households. The television, which was invented in 1948, a few years after the Second World War, took 7 years to reach that figure. The great city of Los Angeles, which at the beginning of the Second World War in 1939 had 15,000 members, 15,000 residents. At the end of the Second World War in 1945, it was home to 1 in 40 Americans, mostly built on the strength of its shipbuilding industry. DDT, the pesticide, it was first used during the Second World War for soldiers who were deployed in tropical theaters of conflict. DDT reduced the incidence of malaria in Sri Lanka by an astonishing 42% in 10 years after the Second World War. So like I said, the Second World War represented the age of limitless technological possibilities. And so when India gained independence during this time, we wanted a piece of the action. We thought we too would have the technological spoils that had come out from the Second World War. But we realized soon after independence was won, and the war was over and independence won, those technologies that had ushered in the atomic age were no longer available to us. Most of them were kept out of our bounds by the United States, the UK, and the Soviet Union. Scholars have noted that Indian scientists were part of secret delegations to laboratories in the UK and the US, especially to the Manhattan Project, which created the first nuclear weapons. But after independence, when the great Indian scientist Homi Bhabha wanted to get an import license for so much as a plastic balloon for his nuclear experiments, he couldn't get the license from the United States. So under this secretive environment, we had three options as a country. The first was to continue importing technology, which, as I said, this wasn't really a viable option because most of them were kept out of our borders. More importantly, we didn't have the foreign exchange needed to buy machinery on an industrial scale. We were still a very poor country after colonial rule. The second option was to focus on our agrarian lifestyle. The average Indian mostly subsisted on livelihood coming from a farm. He or she was poorly educated. The vast majority of Indians after independence were illiterate. And the average lifespan of the Indian was 25 to 35 years old. So it's safe to say the average Indian wasn't thinking long term, so it made sense to think and focus exclusively on our agrarian economy. And the third option that we had was to create an indigenous scientific base that would create the research and development of our technology to feed both government as well as the private sector. And the person who would make the choice among the three options that were available to him was the first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. And Nehru had a number of reasons, political, personal, even philosophical, for exercising the choice that he made. Now, Nehru, as you know, was Mohandas Gandhi's chosen political heir. It was very difficult for somebody who had been handpicked by Gandhi, and everybody is familiar with the Mahatma's view on technology and industrialization and machinery. He was not a big fan of any of these. So it was difficult for Nehru to embrace industrialization in a very big way, but he tried. And personally, Nehru believed that technology should not make man its slave. He really believed it. If you've read The Discovery of India, as I suspect many of you have in this room, he talks about understanding the external environment, or the Brahman. Understanding the Brahman is important to understanding oneself, your soul, or the Atman. And he really believed it. In the context of technology, he wished for Indians to understand the technology that was essentially a creation of man, in order to understand what use you could put these machines to. To a group of engineers who were creating one of the dams in the Damodar Valley project, Nehru is reported to have said once, he points to the laborers on the site and he asked the engineers, have you told the laborers why they're carrying the buckets of mud on their shoulders? This was Nehru. That he believed everybody who was involved in a technological project of nation building had to know what they were up to and what is this great technological enterprise that they were all part of. Unfortunately, this was a very tall proposition because, as I said, the average Indian was poorly educated. What Nehru's insistence did was to create a great division between the elites in India and the ordinary citizens in India with regards to technology. The elites loved Nehru's vision of technology. Homi Bhabha, as I said, he came from a very wealthy Parsi family in Bombay, had extensive national and international networks, and Nehru himself is reported to have told Parliament that he has never said no to Homi Bhabha or the atomic energy program, which explains why it continued to be funded by the government, although it didn't produce, like I said, a single megawatt of electricity for the first 2 decades of its existence. Shanti Bhatnagar, another elite who came from a wealthy family of letters, the Urdu-speaking Brahmin of Lahore, as he was known. He was the first director of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and he too believed in Nehru's vision that you have to understand the pure sciences. Many of you in this room are engineers, and Shanti Bhatnagar believed that you should understand the pure sciences if you wanted to know the application of that pure science to industry. Vikram Sarabhai, another elite. He didn't agree with Nehru on many of the issues, many of the beliefs that Nehru had about private industry and capital, but Vikram Sarabhai couldn't have cared less. Again, he came from one of the wealthiest families in the country, and the brand of institutions that he has set up, including the one that you are studying in today, had very little to do with Nehru's assistance. It was only during the twilight years of Nehru that he was co-opted into the space program as well as the atomic energy program. So the elite subscribed, or at least went along with Nehru's vision. The ordinary citizen, what about him or her? How did the ordinary citizen interact with technology? The first time the average Indian interacted with technology was when he saw American planes drop arms and ammunition, guns and artillery from the skies of Calcutta to help Indian armed forces fight the Chinese on the border. Then the Indian citizen interacted with technology in 1963 when the citizens of Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala saw their sky turn a bright golden orange when an American sounding rocket with a French payload was launched by Indian space scientists of the Tumba Equatorial Launching Station. Then the Indian citizen interacted with technology in 1966 when they sat down at the dinner table and realized that the food before them was some high-yield variety of Mexican wheat. The Green Revolution had hit the household. Through all these instances, the relationship between the Indian citizen, the ordinary Indian citizen, and technology was one that can be best described as shock and awe. There was a great physical and mental distance between the citizen and technology, and that distance has still not been bridged properly. What this vision that Nehru had for Indian technology, don't get me wrong, I believe Nehru was and will probably remain one of the finest statesmen and scholars to ever occupy the high office of Prime Minister in India. But the vision that Nehru had for India and technology led to this great division. And what it allowed for successive governments is to take control of technology. And this became a problem quite acutely during the Indira Gandhi government, because when you have a small number of people in charge of key technological programs in India, such as space, atomic energy, electronics, and so on, it's easier to control these programs. And so Indira Gandhi's government set up one of the most sophisticated license permit quota raj ever seen in the country, which took decades to dismantle, ironically, by herself. Just as it was easy for the government to control technology, there were counter narratives around technology that were created by a small group of people who said that technology was bad, technology was evil. And it was again easy for them because the Indian citizen again did not know much about technology except for seeing it from a great physical distance. So the late George Fernandez and other trade union leaders in Bombay, the financial capital of the country, created this perception that computers were bad during the 60s and the 70s, leading to a great deal of controversy, great deal of protest, leading eventually to the exit of IBM from the country. Now there are good reasons why IBM should have left the country, because they were selling obsolete computers to us. But there was no truth at all to the allegation that computers were going to replace human jobs anytime soon. Nevertheless, the perception stuck. It was on account of a small group of people trying to manipulate narratives around technology. Now, since then, the Indian government has tried to bring technology closer to the people. But because of this great division between elites and commoners with regards to technology, it hasn't been easy. In the early 80s, for instance, the Rajiv Gandhi government created NICNET, the National Informatics Centre's digital network, long before Google was even thought of. NICNET put a personal computer in every district. There were, I think, around 440 districts in India at that time. There was a computer placed in every district in the country. Unfortunately, these computers needed data to be fed into them for a robust national network. And the Indian citizen, again, did not wish to feed data into these computers. Even the local government officials did not want to feed these computers, these personal computers, with data, because they were suspicious of computers. They were also worried about whether the government in New Delhi was going to survey on them, due to whatever perceptions existed. Similarly, in the late 80s, India and the United States signed what was called the Vaccine Action Program, where American companies and American laboratories, in collaboration with Indian researchers, would develop vaccines for ailments that were common in the subcontinent. Now, of course, these programs had to be run with safeguards, and there had to be restrictions on what the vaccines could be used for, what field trials they could be used to. But that was not what the controversy was for at that time. The controversy was whether Indian patients or Indians in general would be guinea pigs or lab rats for innovations coming out of the United States. Again, in 1991, the United States and a group of other countries created the Human Genome Project. I'm sure many of you in the room have heard about the Human Genome Project, which was the first attempt to sequence the human genome. Now, this was a project of enormous medical, economic, cultural, social significance to India. But India did not join the project because we do not want for other countries to hack the Indian body. In the Chandogya Upanishads, there is this phrase called Tatvamasi, you are that, which means you are a reflection as an individual of a cosmic order. Now, Indian scientists and Indian citizens seem to be believing that if you are a reflection of the cosmic order, what is the need to study what lies beneath you? This was the attitude to people who were part of the deliberations at the time to create the Human Genome Project. Now, things have improved subsequently. India has indeed made a great deal of technological progress in the years since. So it's not entirely a sad story as such. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to tell you that the legacies of the past can't be discarded. We have to be mindful of the fact that there is a great deal of distance, again, between technology and the Indian citizen today. A friend of mine is fond of saying, build for Bharat. He says 97% of startups and digital platforms that are created in India today cater to 3% of the population, the minuscule middle class of India. And so a lot of startups think that once the middle class needs have been catered to, it's time to move on to another economy, another emerging market. This is exactly the opposite of what we should be doing. The numbers should be corrected, and 98% of technological platforms in India should be made for 98% of the population. We have to celebrate our victories. The victories in India in the various sectors of technology have been few and far between, including and especially in the space program, where our scientists performed a great deal of feats on account, despite the fact that there were many adverse circumstances hampering their achievements. But we should also learn from the errors of the past, because we can no longer wait for the ordinary Indian citizen to see technology, literally and figuratively fall from the skies. We have to bring technology as engineers, as students studying in one of the most prestigious kind of institutions in the country. We have to create technologies that bring platforms closer to people, and then let them decide for themselves as to whether technology is good or bad. Thank you.